Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Interfaith Community Sanctuary on this beautiful spring/summer morning.
Something that I did last week, but it was requested that I do it again, so I'm doing it again. There's a woman named Jennifer Rice who has a retreat center in Massachusetts, and she has a blog, and this is something that she wrote about honoring ancestors. We are a part of a lineage, a stream of intention and creation whose fountain springs from our ancestors. Their lives have been lived and completed with a beginning, middle, end. And yet something of them lives within each of us. Their forces have had a hand in shaping us. It's a beautiful idea to see ourselves as a stream, as a lineage, and important to remember and honor those who came before us. We have, in fact, many lines of ancestors that we are connected to: the land, earth, and elements themselves, the lineage of all beings, the lineage of all humans, the lineage of your spiritual beliefs, the ancestors of the first people, the indigenous people of the land you are on, your specific bloodline and ancestry back to your homeland, and more. From time immemorial, people have honored their ancestors, connecting to their light. There are many beautiful cultural traditions that teach us as children and guide us so that we hopefully never forget and continue to remember that we stand on the shoulders of all those who came before us. And we can learn and create new traditions as adults. We do not need to know who our ancestors were, nor the story of their lives or the decisions they made. It might be difficult for us to understand them because we do not live in their context. Each time is so specific. Just think of how you'd explain to someone from a different era what it was like to live in a global pandemic. When thinking of our ancestors, it is important to go beyond the stories of what happened, honoring that they may have had difficulties. However, what is more important to remember is their bright spirit and light. Perhaps imagine your ancestors as children, and imagine your ancestors as wise sages. Imagine and feel your ancestors' hearts as a live spring of love that flows to you and your descendants. And I also want to acknowledge that we are sitting on the land of the Coast Salish peoples, particularly the Duwamish. It was not their choice to give up their lands, and they have not yet been recognized by our federal government. If you are interested in supporting that, you can go to realrentduwamish.org. Pardon me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. And I also have a short offering for the Divine Feminine. This is by my friend and a spiritual guide of mine named Helwa. She is one of the people that I feel has a way of illuminating the feminine side of divinity and the feminine side of each one of us, I believe, because in my understanding, the divine feminine is in everybody, in everything, in every creature, and certainly in the divine creation as well. And she writes these lines: "The natural world is comprised of divine signs that God sends us to know something of ourselves and to know something of Him. We are not just called to read the revelation of God's words bound in a book. We are called to read the book of our inner realities and to read the revelation of the natural world, the wisdom of the stars, moon, sun, trees, and the seas." Thank you. So, for our service today, as I had mentioned just a minute ago, we are honoring and welcoming two of our longtime members, Judy Sanderman and Dr. Aysu Rahman, and we are working on this month. Our discernment for this month is engaged listening. And as we work together, the three of us, to create this service, we were talking a lot about how engaged listening is a spiritual practice, particularly for both Aysu and Judy. You will find that they, and I will mention a little bit about how they have been the leaders and guides of two of our wonderful service programs here at ICS that we've been supporting and working with over the years. And I've asked them to particularly focus on how listening, specifically our listening and the listening of the people we were aiding, working with, how listening helped us to interact and develop the work we have done together. Because we all know that helping others and being of service to others is a wonderful thing to do, but in order to do it in a spiritual way, in order to be effective, we believe there has to be a spiritual practice behind it. So I've invited both Judy and Aysu to meet with us. You might remember that the very first Sunday, the very first month, January, when we had a fourth Sunday, I invited Gretchen Rowe and Chiaki Weatherford to talk about the United Village and the Peace Camp International Service project that is a very active part of ICS. And they helped us to understand the topic Sanctuary of Inclusion and how that worked into their service project. So this month, as I said, we're working on the discernment topic, Sanctuary for Engaged Listening. We have come to understand that if our service is to be authentic and effective, whether we do it here in Seattle or with our families or way across on the other side of the globe, it must be based on some deep spiritual practice, including the practice of engaged listening. Service is not simply just a good thing to do. True service, in fact, can be difficult to accomplish if we are not mindful about how we approach our attitudes and our efforts when we serve others. If we base our efforts on spiritual principles, then authentic service really is a vital way of bridging divides, connecting with people who are different from ourselves, and a way of reaching outside of our usual frame of reference to cooperate with and promote the betterment of ourselves as well as all of our brothers and sisters in different environments around the world. So two projects that ICS has been involved with for many years that we're going to focus on today. Project Ethiopia, founded by Judy Sanderman and her late husband, Dennis Wilkins, and the SAMC Medical Clinic for Women and Children in Bangladesh, directed by Dr. Aysu Rahman, and founded by Aysu and her brothers, Jamal and Kamal Rahman, and many other family members, some of whom are here today. Thank you. Both of these projects have project directors and staff in their respective countries, in Bangladesh and in Ethiopia, and many of these folks have visited Seattle and do visit Seattle in person periodically. I think many of you, if you've been here for a while, have met Woke and Workina, the two brothers who are leaders in Ethiopia, and the Dr. Nadira, who has come and been part of our work here in Seattle as well, from the clinic. Aysu, Judy, and several other members of ICS, Susan and myself, and Tracy Nolan, many of us have gone to the different countries and visited, and many of us serve on their board of directors. David Height Miller was on the board of directors. So we're involved, and this community has been very, very active in raising money and volunteering and often traveling to these areas and finding out more about the work we're doing there. It's important to note that both of these projects are located in remote rural areas of the countries, their respective countries, and most service organizations do not go to these remote rural areas. But, and I'm sure you all will confirm this, the people we serve in Ethiopia and in Bangladesh, in Chandapur, they feel very closely connected to our community here at ICS, and they often send us greetings and gratitude. So we have provided, if you came in and you got your program, there's a little handout. Now, I'm not going to ask you to read that right now, but it might be of interest to you for more information on some of the things we're going to be talking about or briefly reviewing. There's a map of the Danglo Areta, and Judy will be talking a little bit about where we're working in Ethiopia. And then there's some photos and information about the medical clinic. But today, we are going to, as I said, focus more on some stories that illustrate how the work is getting done, especially relating to the listening project, the practice of engaged listening. So we found that when we talked about it, there were many similarities between what happens in both Bangladesh and in Ethiopia. So we're going to go back and forth, and I'm going to ask just a series of a few questions, and I'll ask each of both Judy and Aysu to answer briefly the question based on the project they're representing. Hopefully that won't confuse you too much, but I think it'll give you an idea that we're not talking specifically about one thing, we're talking about the process of being of service to others. So I'll begin with Aysu, asking Aysu to give us a brief history and background of the medical clinic and how it came to be in the first place.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So to answer Sally's question, I have to go back a little to talk about the connection between the Interfaith Sanctuary community and a village in the remote of Bangladesh. And in the handout, you can see where Bangladesh is on the world map. So here's how the connection started. It starts with my grandparents in the 1900s. They worked in the village. They were known as spiritual teachers, as guide for their social work. And they were very passionate about education, especially education for women in the village. And they donated land hoping to create or to build a school for women. So in following their deaths, my parents, they formally established a school for women in 1967. And they continued this work, supporting the school, taking care of the school until they passed away in 1991. So after 1991, this kind of fell on our generation, to take care of the school. And so after that, till 2000, it was the Interfaith Community Sanctuary, where Jamal Bhai was, in Seattle, that raised donations so that the school could run. And today, in 2000, it became fully accredited and funded financially by the Bangladesh government. So really successful story there. Every year, there are about 250 to 300 women who are enrolled in this school. So going back to what Sally asked me, there's the connection. There's, we are all listening, our generations, to what's happening. In 2004, I immigrated to the US with 4 of my children. And while I was in Bangladesh, I worked in healthcare. And as a physician, I worked in cities, I worked in towns, in villages. I worked in city slums, in the garment factories. And I experienced firsthand the kind of health disparities that exist in the rural and urban areas. So that's kind of, I have that in me. I'm so grateful for where I am and what I've done, the career I'm in. And I really wanted to give back to the community, to the people. But, I was just waiting to listen and have the opportunity. Now, even after coming here, we kept the connection with our village. So we'd visit, we'd, have phone conversations. And now with the digital world, there are so many ways of keeping connections, But I believe it was in 2011 that during one of our visits back to the village, we talked with the village. We had spent a whole day, sort of afternoon, with the school children, with their families, with the teachers, with some village elders. And we had deep conversations about, how is the life there? What do they need? What's happening? And 2 things came out pretty strongly. One was something, for health services in the village where it's accessible, and a nursing school, so that those who were interested from the school, they would be able to go right there, attend this higher studies in the village itself. So, for me inside, it was like, yes, that's the opportunity. And I spoke to my two brothers, Kamal and Jamal, and we were like, this is a great chance, and this is something we should think about. So back in Seattle, I was really blessed that this dream of ours, we were listened to by very spiritual, generous friends like Sally Joe was there, Karen Lindquist was there, and of course it takes a village. So ultimately in 2012, I think, towards the end of 2012, what we did was we held Bengali dinner, kind of like a fundraising. And we have been doing that every year so that the funds go to the health service, providing health services. So anyway, back to the 2012, so 2012, 2013, and then finally in 2014, we traveled to Bangladesh. We didn't have a space of our own, so we went to the school, and then after school hours, we started providing health services there. We had a female doctor come twice a month, and we gave services to about 120 patients. The villagers there, they knew where the school is, so that was helpful. But soon after, we realized that the demand grew, so we realized we wanted to have our own building. We raised funds on donated land right beside the school. We constructed a building, a 3-room building, and we shifted to that in August of 2015, so 18 months, I think, after we first opened. We hired a female medical doctor and physician assistants, and we offered services now 4 days a week. And we were seeing around 600 to 700 patients a month. At present, we have hired another female physician and physician's assistant, and we are now open 6 days a week. And we see approximately 1,000 patients a month. So, yeah.
Just a second. Okay, could I interrupt?
Yeah.
And that, because you brought us right up to the present, to kind of the present, and that was a beautiful, let's remember, this was the ancestral village of the Rahman family, so it reminds me of what you were talking about in your ancestry talk. Now, I want to pause and let Judy give the background, the same kind of historical background to Project Ethiopia and how ICS was connected with that. And we'll come back to you in just a minute.
My late husband, Dennis Wilkins, and I traveled to Ethiopia in 2002. According to our guidebook, we took the walk to the National Tourist Office and hired a guide for 2 days. His name was Awoka Ginatu. He was a former history teacher. He showed us around, and children would gather, and then he would interview them, including our questions as well. And what we discovered is so few of them could go to school. They didn't have enough money for the uniform, for pencils, notebooks. And so I thought, all right, I have a little bit of a cure. And I pulled out of my bag a bundle of pens that I could give to the kids. And Awoka's response was, no, you can't do that. Why? Because if you give directly to children, they will skip school to find tourists to see if there's something that they can have. You must give the pens to the school will give them to the children. Oh my gosh. We thought we were doing a good thing. We were so grateful that he spoke truth to our lack of understanding of the culture, and we had to listen. There's no way you don't listen when somebody says no. And so that really inspired us. When we got back home, we still were thinking about Awoka's approach to giving and how perfect it was. And so we just decided, let's send him $300, and our criterion will be spend it equally on girls and boys. Back came an envelope filled with pictures of a ceremony where the 25 poorest students were standing with brand new uniforms. There were 86 library books, and all the teachers had their arms full of supplies for $300. Not only that, he sent all the receipts too. He had been interviewed on the radio for who sent $300 to this school, and also officials of the town had been at the ceremony. Yeah, we were hooked. Okay, so we kept sending money as often as we could to Awoka, and we're always pleased with what he wrote. In 2004, we returned to Ethiopia because we had saved $2,800 for the project. We didn't have a project then. We had saved $2,800 to go and figure out how Awoka would deal with it. I'll just tell you one thing that happened. We went to a school where Dennis and my response was kind of to roll our eyes that it was so hopeless. They needed everything. But they quickly had a needs assessment, and they told Awoka they would like benches so the students didn't have to sit on the dirt anymore. Okay, Awoka took us to a carpentry school. Lo and behold, they had those benches, and we got benches to seat 1,000 students. He rented a truck and driver. We piled those benches in and arrived back at the school, which was dumbfounded. For all of you who are teachers, you know nothing happens overnight. It happened overnight, and they had benches for 1,000 kids. That happened to be Dennis's 66th birthday that day, and he said he never had a better birthday than the thank you ceremony that they held with all these children, and Awoka was translating their thanks. Okay, so we were in. The school also told us they needed water, a well, and Awoka told us that without all the fancy-do that big companies have that come in, they could dig a well for $2,300. So we came home and we were so excited. We were telling everybody about we're now going for the well, and people started giving us money. So we thought, oh boy, we better be responsible about this. So we asked Interfaith Community Sanctuary if they would sponsor us, and they said yes. Sally Jo became a board member, has been for 20 years, and late David Heitmiller was also a board member. And it just went wonderfully after that. We always described it as this is our accidental retirement project, because we were still the people with no skills, no cultural understanding. We had to rely on Awoka being our bridge. And now, on that trip, we met his brother, Warkana. And he also became a bridge to what is appropriate, what should be done, understanding the culture. Awoka and Warkana were they both grew up in a rural area. They never had any NGO help because they were rural. And as Sally Jo said, the NGOs go to the cities, not to the rural area. But they knew how to help people. So they thought it would be a good idea if we focused our efforts in that Dangla, that whole map you see is the Dangla Warada, is their definition of the government status. So with us with no skills and no basic understanding of how to operate here, but with this excellent, excellent team leading the way, that's how Project Ethiopia got started. That's how we connected here. And then in 2017, we became under our own right, 501c3. I want to read you just one thing, and that's the mission statement of Project Ethiopia. And everywhere in here, you will hear listen, because the verb is partner, and you can't partner with somebody without listening and negotiating and everything. Project Ethiopia partners with rural communities to create hope and opportunity through education, healthy homes, and economic resilience. Thank you.
Yes, I will. That's okay. No worries at all. I just do want to say that our motto is where patient is family, and hopefully donors are family, feel family too. But the mission is we work alongside the community of a rural village in Bangladesh to empower women and children through healthcare and education.
I have to keep passing the mic back.
And that's okay. Oh, maybe I should just hold it.
The second question I'm going to ask both our folks here is, how do we partner with the villagers in these countries and their leaders, and how do we avoid, what do we avoid as we partner with them? Because this is an interesting question, as Judy and Aysu will both point out. There are a lot of wrong ways to help others, and it's tricky to find the right way. So we're going to hear just a couple more stories, and I think, Aysu, you're going to begin with us.
Let me just try and hold it. Okay, so to answer your question, there are, of course, many ways that we can partner, but I'm going to give the example of when we first started. As I told you, we didn't have space, so we held the health services in a classroom. The students would volunteer, and they'd put away the benches, get the table, set up the blood pressure machine, the weight machine, and things like that. And so twice a month, the female doctor would travel about 2 hours from a nearby city, and she'd provide services. And the villagers who knew where the school was, they were also hearing from the students about this initiative, so they knew exactly where to go. And words spread, word by mouth spread about this, and the demand grew. And we realized that we do need, if we need to expand, we have to have our own space. One thing, the school partnership was great because we continued that for 18 months. But we did realize that, our health services had to take a back seat when there was any school function after hours. So then we'd have to adjust our date and time. So we had to find something that was safe, that was convenient, and the patients were also a little confused. Is this a school project? Is it going to continue? Is it, just for a short while? So anyway, like you heard before, we were able to raise fund, construct our own building, get into the building. And during that time, it taught us that it's the partnership, listening. The partnership is important, but listening to the patients, to really what our main focus is, what they want, and that is more services. That's very important too. So that's one thing that reminds me of a partnership. The other one happened just recently, last year. A village woman came up and she said, I have these sewing skills, and I would like to teach sewing classes and if I could get the space in the clinic after the clinic is finished. So we did listen to her. We started sewing lessons, and then now she has students. Some of them are the school children, some from the village, and she teaches sewing. It was also the villagers that we partnered with, the community, who helped us find our third physician assistant, who helped us find a male eye specialist, and now we offer eye health care. So partnerships are really important, and it's important that the listening happens two ways, both ways.
Another question we have is, how do we listen and learn together? In other words, it's so easy when you're the people with the money, and your people have ideas about how it would be a great way to spend that money. And then the people receiving the money or the benefits, how do we make sure there's a sense of ownership? Because what we had been hearing about and reading about is that many NGOs go in and let's say they dig a well or they build a well, and then, they come in with all their fancy equipment and all their people, and then they leave. And within a few years, the well is in disrepair. Nobody knows how to fix it. Nobody has any parts to fix the mechanics of it. And it goes into obliteration. It's not workable anymore. So we want to be sure things like that didn't happen to our projects. So Judy, what do you have to say about this question about how do we partner with villagers, and what do we avoid?
Okay. I've learned a lot. First of all, Project Ethiopia operates at the grassroots level. Awoka and Workana meet with the community elders to decide what are their needs and priorities, and we listen. TOPS was to have grade 8 schools in the communities. This is because the town has the high school starting at 9th grade, but they need to have their 8th grade, which must happen in the community. And most schools did not go that high, so they could not transfer. So access to education, number one. Our process is this. First, we made a decision. Yeah, okay, let's listen. Let's build school buildings. We'll build a 4-classroom school building. Well, what'll it be like? Suggest concrete blocks, da-da-da-da-da. No. It'll be done the Ethiopian way because they know how to build their homes, and they'll build it like their homes. So they are eucalyptus branches with mud straw topping. And then they can build the 4 classrooms. Project Ethiopia then would decide, by having the community elders come and say their villagers were ready to cooperate and participate, then Workana or Awoka would go to that village and describe, you're going to collect all the eucalyptus branches, you're going to collect the mud straw, your kids can squish around in it to mix it, and you'll frame the building and mud it, yes, and then show of hands. They actually had to put their hands up so he knew there was commitment. Then they did all those things while Project Ethiopia worked with them doing the expensive things. Project Ethiopia poured the concrete floors, put the roofs on, had metal workers make metal doors and metal shutters, no glass, and painted and purchased all the desks for the building. So it was a partnership, and it was done, and then there was a huge celebration. And they felt they owned it because they had done it. And therefore, they maintain it. We don't have to. When they are successful that way as a village and show that much community spirit, Project Ethiopia is ready to partner again on more aspects. I'll just briefly state what they are. All the absolutely poor who live with grass roofs that you can't replace anymore because it's too expensive to buy grass with the grazing needs. Anyhow, those people can get metal roofs if their neighbors will build them a square house. We'll just supply the roof, okay? And that's about 50 homes per community. They get a farmers association where they can learn from Workana, who was farmer of all of Ethiopia, farmer of the year for all of Ethiopia for 4 years in a row. Has much to tell. Okay, they can get their farmers association. They will have a savings and credit association moved where they can save and thus have microloans at 5% for 6 times the amount they have saved. And the fourth thing is they can get a solar lantern for their homes, no electricity anywhere. Okay, so it's a big deal to be successful on that school. We had a failure. they didn't mud their school. They got nudged by working it, go mud your school. They did not. So finally Project Ethiopia mudded the school. And they had the celebration, and Worka announced that, I'm sorry, this ends our association with the community because you did not fulfill your commitment. Oh, they were horrified. They apologized very publicly. This is the ultimate. They actually raised within their community enough money to pay Project Ethiopia the mudding costs. Okay, so they were back in. Now, who was listening to that? Every other community was listening. No one wanted to be caught not fulfilling their commitment. So we've had great success building those schools. Now I'll point out I'll list two of Project Ethiopia's, what we call our powerful practices. Listen and learn. You can tell that one operates all the time. And secondly, engage community, because then you have this lasting benefit. And the third one is spread hope. And we do that we have 35 communities on that map that we will eventually get to. And we build a school building, and then it may not be grade 8. It only may be up to grade 4 now. But we go on. That's it for them for now, because we're spreading hope, and we're going to another community and building a building for wherever they are. And then we'll cycle back. And now we have 16 grade 8 buildings. So, the other communities did not get jealous or resentful or anything, because they know their turn will be coming, because we just do one at a time. Let's see, the success in that area. There was one high school when Dennis and I first went, and we started our work. That's 2005 or 4. How many now? 7. There are lots of students getting through grade 8 now. Okay, now we come to the fun part. How not to do things. I say fun only because you learn so much when you realize how not to do things. We have nothing to do with administration of schools. You build a school, the government comes in with the teachers and the books. You're done. Okay. Second, there's no Habitat for Humanity approach. We had people here wanting to go over and help. No. First of all, you would not know how to put up eucalyptus branches and mud them, ferment the mud and mud it. And secondly, that would take away from them knowing that it was their ownership. So we ruled that out. We are not an NGO in Ethiopia. Woka and Morkana were adamant about that, and we understand. We would not have full control of our money and where we worked. In case of crisis, we would be booted out of the country, because they always get suspicious that NGOs are, giving people ideas that they're getting upset about. And third is the big plus for us. You cannot import equipment duty-free or materials. Well, that works well for us, because that means we have to buy and hire local. So all of our donor dollars go right to the merchants and the factories to create all the materials we need for the school. And likewise, for services we need, it goes to the cart drivers, the painters, the metal workers, the mudders, you name it. Everybody receives all the money you sent, gets to the projects, but it gets there through the townspeople. So you may ask, doesn't that make our mission statement a little bit inaccurate, because we work in rural communities? And truly, it sort of does, because everyone is benefiting, whether they live in town or whether they are the receiver of all these projects. So I'll just mention one thing about the map. You don't have to look now, but the map has this government area that would be kind of like a county, And all of these 35 places are like village, not villages, but they're smaller. It could be like villages. Of the 35, we're working or have finished or are working in 19 of them. And our goal is to get through all 35. So you can tell, we trust them, they trust us, and on it goes. Okay, thanks a lot.
And thank you, Judy. That was really a detailed explanation. And it reminded me, Aysu, the school that your parents started, the School for Girls, that also, I think you've mentioned to me before, is now part of the government. They have you did mention it had been accredited by the government. They supply the teachers and the textbooks. So it does become the principals, all the leadership is there, and that's something that both projects have been involved with, that education piece. And I wondered if you'd talk a little bit, Aysu, about women and health care. Like in our country, you go to see a doctor, it could be a male doctor, a female doctor, you could be male or female. There's no real difference. But could you explain to us how that has, I mean, I myself was surprised to hear that Aysu was a doctor in Bangladesh, because I wasn't sure. I don't know if all countries have women doctors. Well, Bangladesh has particularly a lot of women doctors apparently. But can you tell us why that's important in the clinic setting? Because that's something kind of we might not know.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, you know, in the beginning of starting our health services, what was very important and what the villagers had wanted, the women had wanted, was a female provider. That's something that usually in the government facilities or private clinics, they don't have much of a choice. And I think culturally, it's just more, they feel more at ease to go and talk to a female physician or a physician's assistant. So this was something that they had told us also. And so we've tried to always maintain that. The staff also there mostly are women. We do have a male eye specialist. It's a little hard to get specialists to come to the remote village. And this is examining the eye. So, you know, the villagers where that's, you know, they appreciate that. They appreciate the services. But yes, culturally they feel more, at least at the village, they feel more comfortable.
Okay, so in just a minute, we're going to move into giving all of you an opportunity to either share a response or ask a question. I want to be sure, though, that you all both have had a chance to say everything you wanted to say. So I'm going to give you. Do you have more? Yeah. Okay, I thought so, because you know we'll open it up for questions and we'll take them.
I wanted to. Oh, I don't need to. I wanted to share some more of the yes, no, maybe, how will we agree situations. So I have two situations here. The high schools asked, when Dennis and I visited, the high schools needed help. I mean, the one high school, they really needed everything. We said no. Our mission is for primary schools. A donor, a Canadian donor, wanted to give money enough to send several students all the way through university. Dennis and I said, oh, we don't think so, because our mission is primary school, but we will ask Awoka and Morkana, but we're not sure we want to get in. It's not our mission. Okay, so what did we do? We asked Awoka and Morkana, and of course they knew about the high schools, but they didn't know about this university thing. Awoka says, university is free. Okay. What costs a lot is getting to the university. Oh, it's free, but you have to pay back every year after you get your job. So you pay back a percentage of what it costs later. But anyhow, to get there is free. Okay, the cost is a family cost that transforms a student from a town student into a city student. And So it's to get a suitcase, a book bag, bedding, a phone, if you need it, shoes, whatever. It's to change you into a town student, and then to buy the bus ticket, round-trip bus ticket, to a university that may be a long ways away because the government decides where you will go to university. And so that can amount to $150 or $160 for a very poor family, who also will lose the services of that child during the next year after they graduate. They won't be able to help on the farm. Plus, they have no idea that the student will be successful because nobody's really gone to university. Okay, so what we decided is we would call these University Transition Awards, and it would be just once to get them to their university. We picked out the 20 highest scoring males and females on the university entrance exam and gave them this whole big package of things that they needed, as well as their bus ticket. It was amazingly successful. Everybody finished the year. They came home so excited. They were tutoring next year's seniors. And it was an idea that was really a winner. By the way, the Canadian donor was very satisfied too. The next year, we decided, well, we should really help some more students who are needy and didn't score that high. And so we increased it to 10 more based on need. And the community elders could decide on the neediest in the villages. And so those who passed the university exam but at a lower score because they work so hard, they're working day and night, they don't have any time to study, but they got through the test, and so they were sent. Okay, then we decided, let's make it 40, 50, 100. How about 160? Now, we give 40 for merit and 160 for need. And 2 years ago, everyone who passed the university entrance exam went to university. On our University Transition Awards. And it's been true through the years that if you get them there, they will return because all their fears and anxieties are gone, and the family is sure they will be successful because look, all these other kids have gone and been successful. So that's been a true, a huge success that started with no, maybe yes. Okay. By the way, the high schools don't get any equipment out of it, but the high schools are thrilled because what they have now are serious seniors. They go to every class and they study, and that's a wonderful thing. The second issue is hunger. There is food scarcity, and it is a reality in Ethiopia, and a donor in Seattle wanted to give enough money to have a nutritious meal made for every one of 1,500 students at one school. And it would be between shifts, so the young and the old would both get that nutritious lunch. And Avoca and Orkana instantly said no. Okay, why? It would ruin the family structure. How? Well, when there is food scarcity, you just hope that everyone will get one good meal a day. And so when the family sits down for dinner, the child who had a nutritious lunch will be excluded. And that will break down the family authority and the family congeniality and everything else. So, no. But, as I said, Warkana was Farmer of the Year for 4 years. Warkana decided with every community he could start a farmers association so that he could help them with crop increase, composting, market timing. He could help them in a host of ways. Beehives is the latest, but we started beehives even back then to help them. So he went to the village, the community elders, and asked, who are the progressive farmers? And they named them, and he picked 40 men and 10 women to be in each farmers association. The 10 women are because in the census it shows that there are 20% women head of household and farmers. So they are represented there too. And so that was his way of boosting farm output, either for the money to buy the food or to plant more food. So that was his solution to the hunger. Okay.
Did you want to talk a little bit about the construction of the clinic when we actually, who constructed the clinic when the building was being constructed?
Oh, yeah. So the construction of the building were all local. You know, the bricks were those that were from the village. The workers, the carpenters, the cement, everything was locally done. And the construction was kind of overseen by my brother Kamal, who has his offices and, you know, in the city, but he'd send them and take care of that construction. So that's how it was made.
Did you have anything else to add about your part of it? Anything you haven't had a chance to say?
No, I was just going to talk about, you know, we've been talking a lot about the nursing school and how that's been our focus and our plan forward. And just to put in there, the clinic, you know, when you have a nursing school, the students need somewhere where they can have hands-on experience. And so we were hoping that the clinic would evolve into maybe a hospital or at least somewhere where they'd have this, this hands-on experience. And of course, nursing school takes time. It's a lot of funds, but in the meantime, we found really so many generous donors here and also in Bangladesh who give scholarships to young women. And for nursing, for anything, you know, that they want to study after the school, because the school is free, and so they can achieve their goals. So that's going on. We do it every year. We give scholarships. But then, you know, we were kind of going through our plan that, okay, nursing school, maybe we'll get lucky and get a good fund or a grant. But anyway, after COVID, which shook the whole world, things changed. And I'm not exactly sure, you know, of all, we know many things changed in many parts of the world, but we started listening from our patient or hearing from our patients that they wanted something else. Not the nursing school is fine, but they wanted a maternity home, a birthing center. And so, you know, listening is simple, but it's also hard, especially when you're here and the project is in Bangladesh, in the village, which is why we hired a project manager who would kind of be our ears. And you heard me before saying that, you know, I travel to the clinic every year, sometimes twice a year. Sally, Joe, Susan, Tracy, you also heard that they've been there with me. And so we know how important it is to go out, you know, not only listen to the patients, but go out into the village and talk to them. And I just want to say that, you know, again, listening, I picked this up in my childhood. We didn't live in the village, but we went often to the village, especially vacation. Vacation time always meant going to the village. And I remember seeing my father, within minutes of being there, he'd change from his city clothes and he'd wear village clothes, you know. And he'd either be going into the village talking to friends and family, or people would come to greet them. So I kind of, you know, try to do that when I'm in the village. I go out and meet people. I introduce myself, not, you know, I'm this, but I'm the granddaughter of Hidayatullah. I'm the daughter of Suraiya and Ataur. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned it before, Suraiya is my mother's name, and Ataur is my father's name. And actually, my daughter here, Suraiya, that's her name also, so maybe she'll do something. But anyway, going back to the listening, just like here, I think people will remember me more if I say I'm Jamal's sister. So anyway, in the village, people remember me as that, oh, this is his daughter or his granddaughter. So we listened, we talked about it here, and we realized that by 2024, we had a ton of patient information, notebooks and ledgers and, all sort of recorded. But going through that would be tedious and not error-free. Trying to find out some correlation of what are the patients now telling us and, how does that work? So we decided this is really the time to think about electronic medical records, to get data real time. And we also wanted to answer questions that people were asking. What's your age group, that go and take services? How many are new patients? How many are established patients? What are the top diagnoses? And we really couldn't answer that. So this year, we gathered fund, there was trainings. We were very blessed that we could start the electronic medical records from this year in January. And now we found that 40% of our patients are young women. So what does that mean? Again, culturally, especially in the village, a young woman gets married, she starts a family. And nearly 50% of those young women coming to our clinic were going to be pregnant. So now it makes sense, why the patients wanted this. So do we provide any services? We provide antenatal checkups. And they're basic 4 antenatal checkups that you have to do. And we were also very lucky that we had an ultrasound machine in 2018. Now, some of you, you'll be surprised to hear that there are many women in the village who go through their pregnancies and they've never had an ultrasound throughout their pregnancies because either it's not accessible or it's not affordable. And here we have it in our clinic. So we have that, but we don't have anything built for the day of delivery. So, we discussed it, and it's too strong a message to ignore. So now we have pivoted. This is, where we're listening, and we're pivoting. And, maybe someday we'll get $1 million or $2 million to have our nursing school. But meantime, our focus is now for the birthing center. And remember, the birthing center is not just, a place where a woman is going to come and give birth and go away. She'll be there. We need a space where the family can come and spend the time with her, where they can eat, where we can tell them how to take care of, your newborn child, the mother, how she learns. So it's a pretty intense sort of project. And I feel very much at peace. I think we all, Sally, Jo, Susan, Jamal, all of us here feel very at peace that we have listened and we are putting it out there. And hopefully our donors, Life Energy, will assist us and we'll be successful. So that's the path.
Thank you so much to both Judy and Aysu for sharing. Steve, maybe you could give us a little bit of time and music to just kind of contemplate what we've heard, and if you think of any comment or question, we'll take a few minutes to answer that before we wrap up here. Thank you, Steve. Very helpful in letting things. You always play the most perfect music. I just love that. I know, and you do that so beautifully. So at this point, this is how we like to keep the recording on so people can hear the question and answer if they're at home. I know there are people at home listening in. And what I'd like you to do, if you have a question or a comment, if you could say it, especially, let's start with the question. If you have any questions, let's start with that. And ask it to me just in your voice, and I'll repeat the question in the microphone, and then it can be either addressed to Judy or Aysu or just in general. So raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll hear it, and I'll repeat it.
Yeah, so I've seen Aysu tell her story over the years many times. Where do the men get their health care?
Oh, good question. All right, so one question is, where do the men get their health care in Chandipur in Bangladesh? Very good question.
Yes, thank you for that question, Steve. So the men have the ability to kind of go. So let me back up a little. In the village of Chandipur, there are government facilities, private doctors and physicians, sort of maybe an hour away or a few miles away. And men can travel. They can go, you know. It's harder for women and children, especially our clients. They are those who don't work, who are depending on their family or depending on their husband or father or brother to take them. So, you know, they're not empowered, but because of the village clinic now, they don't have to depend on anyone, they can just go. But for the men, yeah, so and they walk. They walk, thank you, yes, they walk from different villages, nearby villages, sometimes half an hour, you know, in between villages or 45 minutes, and they know that there'll be a female physician and all of that. But going back to your question, Steve, men are more, I guess they can travel, they can, you know, they're more empowered, at least in the village, to go and get health services. Having said that, we have had some villagers say to us, what about us? You know, are you going to start a health clinic for us? So maybe someday.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or things that have come up as you've been listening that you would like to ask? Joey, yeah.
So I'm curious about the school, and you said something about eighth grade, or so the government doesn't provide the primary, only 8 and up, and so you need to get them prepared for the 8 and up. Is that my understanding?
That's about Ethiopia. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Yes.
Let me repeat the question. In Ethiopia, how do the school systems work? Why do we why doesn't the government provide primary schools, or doesn't the government provide primary schools as well as high schools? Yeah, good question.
The government does provide a few primary schools rurally, but not, I don't know, I'm thinking a number it might be like 10%. And it's too far for kids to walk to those, just like it would be to walk to town. So that's why everyone feels the need to get their grade 8 school. Yeah.
I can remember we've had stories in our newsletters and stories of individual parents who had several children, and the child will tell this story. I was too young to walk the long distance to school, because, you know, I had to cross a stream, and at one point I had to cross a road, and my parents were afraid I couldn't do that alone. So if the school it's hard to picture Ethiopia. It's a very rural area. I mean, there are miles and miles of grazing land and farmland, and then a couple of houses, and then miles and miles of land. And so it's not like we live in, the kind of density we live in at all, right?
Right. If I can just add one more thing about the difficulty of the walk. There were lots of injuries of children trying to walk because there's a wet season that gets everything wet, and then the dry season causes heaves and cracks in the earth. And students would step into a crack, break a bone. So there were lots of injuries trying to walk. When I said we spread hope by scattering the schools we were built, we were working and was very good about figuring out which grades were where and where they needed in the middle that they might be able to walk a suitable distance that they could walk between the villages to get the next grade there until they could get it here. So yeah, so it was a cooperative effort. The place where they've built their schools is closer to the town. The government has built schools, and we're building them. You can see where we've been, where we're building them is in the distance. Farther than Dennis and I walked sometimes. We would ride a donkey cart out to the school because it was, even in good weather and seeing everything, it was too far for us.
And as Judy mentioned earlier, now that there are so many more primary schools and so many more kids wanting into high school, the government is building more high schools.
Yes.
And that the government is happy to do. And they're also closer to the town of Dongla because then the children are older and they can take a bajaj into school, or they might go into town and live with a family member or a friend during the school week while they're at school and then come home on the weekends. But the children are older now, they're in high school, so they can transfer to the high school. And the government, that's why we don't build high schools, because the government is doing that. So sometimes it's filling the gaps, just like we had to do in Bangladesh, filling the gaps where the government is not always stepping in. And that's one of the things that both of these projects have focused on a lot. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Well, let's do one. Well, we can talk afterward, too.
Yeah, maybe. So I'm just sort of curious, like, do you have any about the schools again? Like, it's weird the government would like start at 8th grade. Like, why not the younger grades?
Okay, and let me clarify one more thing. The government builds schools in the town. They build primary schools in the town as well as the high school in the town. But the same distance is involved to get to those.
So it's harder for the younger kids.
Yes.
So you're providing the gap for the younger kids that live
Farther away, right.
basically. And then once they're older, it's figured they can get to the high school.
Right.
Right, they can get to the high school because they
Think of-
either they live there or live with family members or just commute. Yeah.
Think of the disparity in the United States of America, rural health care. I grew up in Appalachia. There are places in our country where there's no hospital. There's no place where if you need a C-section and an emergency, you're going to be able to get it. They're not going to helicopter you to Washington, D.C. or something. So in every country, the rural areas are always behind the cities when it comes to basic services because the government just never has enough money to do it all. And they go for the larger population centers, and there's some, makes sense, but it leaves a big gap.
Right, and we're just thankful that they provide the teachers and the books once the school is built.
All right, last question.
One, okay, for the medical clinic. I'm just curious, I'm trying to learn about the dynamics of the culture. And so what is the dynamic that the women appreciate a woman doctor? What is do you know what they don't want to talk about their private female things with a male doctor? Is that kind of the culture?
Yeah, so the question is, why is it that women prefer women doctors in general?
I think it comes, Bangladesh, the society is patriarchal society, and so when you are going to a doctor, already you're thinking, this is someone in their minds, someone who knows about their bodies or who knows about this and that, and what women have told me is that they are more at ease with women because it's a patriarchal society. It's more people don't listen. You know, the men don't listen, the father doesn't listen, the husband doesn't listen. They just are, well, sometimes lectured or just told what to do. And now that's not of course there are different differences in households, but the idea is that they feel more comfortable. Also, the patients have said that, you know, when they talk to a woman, talking to them about things like, yes, body parts, but like menstruation, you know, those are not very open subjects. So they feel all around much more comfortable being able to say this to someone who understands and who's not going to be judgmental or anything else. So that's the main reason. Yeah, thanks for the question.
All right, very good. So thank you again for the wonderful and wise sharing that you have brought us today, and the concentration on the processes we go through when we're helping others. And I want to encourage everybody to bring this, let's all bring this into our own personal lives and the people around us, whether they're family members, community members, people we interact with in the neighborhood and in the community. How do these lessons reflect back on how we can deal with, listen to, help other people? You know, every time we're called to help somebody around us, how do we put a context on that and think about how our help can be of the most use to both ourselves and to the person we're helping? So we're just going to encourage everybody to think about that as you move through this. And then we're going to take a few minutes here to share our wealth with the community and with our wonderful Interfaith Community Sanctuary. If you have a donation for us, that would be beautiful. If you would like to have more information about the projects you've heard about, we also have, I mean, we're in the middle of a fundraising drive for Project Ethiopia focusing on beekeeping, a whole different thing. And I'll be sending something out about that. And I know that we'll be having a Bengali dinner later in the fall. And sometimes that happens right here in our sanctuary. Sometimes it happens in a bigger venue. But there's always more you can learn about. And they both have wonderful websites to find out more. We also are happy to accept donations for our own building and our own activities going on here. And let's talk for a minute about upcoming gatherings. And I've been asked to mention an end of life planning class that's being put on by Dave Matthews. And he is offering a class on May 31st from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And he sent out a message on our Google group, but there's also a flyer here where you can work on end-of-life planning, a course, and they'll be exploring legal documentation, but also practical considerations, relational networks, wishes for your memorial, etc. So that's something that you can come up and get a flyer for. And next Sunday is our first Sunday worship, and we have guests coming from, if you want to refer to the inside of your flyer, from the Nirankari Mission. This is a group of people that we've been working with over the years, on and off, and they're local in this area and also national. And they will be coming with some of their youth, as well as a couple of their people higher up in their organization, and they will be presenting to us about their spiritual work. And they'll be here next Sunday and be sharing some music and some offering of their spiritual community and their spiritual practices. And then we have our weekly classes that go on every night of the week. There's one thing and another. There are meditation classes. On Thursday, a meditation class. There's the Sisiwi Circle, the Native American Medical Circle that meets. There's a Course in Miracles that meets, and I'd like you to check the website for the dates and times. And most of us are signed up for every Monday morning we get a little email about the upcoming gatherings for that week and the special events for that week. And we'd love to have people show up for whatever speaks to you, whatever you feel you need that week. Does anybody have a special event that I should be mentioning that I might be forgetting about? that they'd like to remind folks of. Okay. Then there is a special event happening in Luxembourg next week, and that is the Interfaith Run for Peace. And this is a run that both Jamal and I have been to quite a few years ago, and also with our friend Garrett, who used to be a part of our community but had moved away and is now back in Oregon. So at the end, don't go away, because at the end of the service we're going to get together and sing our blessing song, and we're going to videotape it so we can send it to them, because they've asked us for greetings. And remember, many of you were here about a month ago, and I brought a friend from Luxembourg who is visiting us, who wanted to come. She came to our universal worship service, and she was very impressed and happy, and she's gone back to share that with them. Next weekend she took a lot of pictures, and she's going to share that. And so they asked us to send a little video. So we'll say goodbye to the folks online now who have donated online. I hope if they were feeling inspired, they can go to the website and hit the donate button. And we thank them for being here, and we'll see them again next week. And we will then close up here with any prayers or, and any prayers or